Hello. Hey, Jason. Hey, Betsy.
Hi there.
How we doing today?
Good. How are you?
So far, so good.
Oh, my husband wants me to do that to my bookcase, color code it
Nope.
like that.
Nope. It's a disaster because you can't
Ah,
find a book.
exactly. I'm like, no, no, no. It needs to be more like a library, less like a rainbow.
Yeah.
Mine truly is just a hot mess regardless, but whatever.
Show some character. Hi, Jody.
Hey, Doan, nice to see you.
Dr. Stamp. Nice to see you as well. Do you always plan the shirt on purpose? I like it. Get all my tabs set up. Give it a couple minutes and we'll roll. Everything's recording, just FYI for cautionary sake, if that's important. Right. So in the interest of time, I know we've got some other people that'll jump on here, but in the interest of respecting time, I'll get going. Um, so I'm going to go through a bunch of stuff here, and it's easier for what I'm going to do here. It's easier if people hold questions till the end. So a couple things. I know some people may have to jump off before I'm done. So if you have questions and you want to throw them in the chat while you have them, I can kind of respond that way afterwards. But then also what I'll do is after this, I'll go through and answer, any questions I don't answer live. I'll send that in a follow-up email. After this, I'm also going to email you a link to, a document that has kind of step-by-step instructions and a couple examples, and then a quick little feedback survey. So you'll get a whole bunch of stuff from me afterwards, but I'll leave plenty of time for kind of Q&A stuff at the end. But like I said, if you want to throw them in the chat just to make sure you don't forget them or to make sure I have them if we don't happen to get to them during our time together. I'll be happy to answer them later. Um, so I stumbled into a webinar a while back where a guy kind of did a version of this where it was more for like copywriters and digital marketers and stuff about helping ChatGPT write in their voice and in their tone and everything. And I just kind of kept kicking around the idea and experimenting with things, trying to figure out can I do this for me as a teacher? And I actually can, which is I think is kind of cool. Some people think it's scary, this idea of a clone or a twin or whatever you want to call it. But it really is. I found it to be a really powerful tool to just help me be a lot more efficient in what I'm doing. And ultimately for me and what I feel is important for me to spend a lot more time with my students. Um, so I will dive right in. Uh, yes, please. All right. So essentially what, in this part of the document I'll send you, essentially this is a four-step process here where we want to first make ChatGPT forget everything it knows about us, and then we're going to train it about us um, in a very kind of methodical way, intentional way. Then we're going to have it add a lot more depth to that training we did, and then we're going to have it create sort of a new set of memories about us, so that when we're getting output from ChatGPT, when we're asking it for things, it's having a much deeper and richer understanding of who I am as a teacher and how I approach the things I do in my role as a teacher. Okay. So the first step is we want to have ChatGPT forget everything it knows about us. And so to do this in this personalization, and all of this is available on the free plan. You don't have to have a paid plan to do this. So in this personalization tab here, all the way at the bottom is this memory section. And so we can manage our memories. I have yet to find somebody who can adequately explain to me how exactly this how exactly ChatGPT decides what to store in memory or not. So I would imagine if you all go into your memories and you look at them, it's a complete scattered fragmentation of totally random stuff that just makes no rhyme or reason and makes no sense, right? When I went in here and did this the first time, it was some teaching stuff. It was my wife asked me about some plants. It was fun stuff I was doing, with visual. It's just like a total random assortment of things. And so what happens is that's what it that's what it knows of me. And so when it's replying to me, it's kind of relying on some of that information. And because it's so fragmented, it really starts to distort a lot of how it responds to me. Okay. So the goal here is to wipe that clean and start from scratch. And so in this manage memory section here, all the way down, why is it not there? There we go. We can delete all the memories. And this doesn't change anything else. It doesn't change your chat history. It doesn't affect anything else, right? All this is doing is deleting these memories that it kind of uses and stores in its memory banks. So the first part of this is just deleting all those. If you want, you can go through there and see, like, is there anything interesting in there that maybe I want to keep? I would manage, I would venture to guess that there isn't, basically. So if we want to start from scratch and kind of build this twin or clone or whatever, we want to delete all of those memories. And then you'll just see a blank screen here. So you kind of start with this clean slate. Okay. So then what we want to do is basically train ChatGPT through the use of these memories to think like we think and to respond with some of the training, with some of the voice and the tone and all that kind of thing that we typically will do in our teacher role, right? And so this prompt here, I'll show you here. It basically has 15 questions in it. And here's where you can tweak it however you want, right? So again, I'll have this prompt to you in a doc I share, but it's got these 15 questions. And some of them are more personal and some of them are more directly related to teaching roles. So it asks about my identity, it asks about my core role and core expertise, titles, primary audience. So maybe it's K through 12, maybe and the more detail you can put in here, the better. So for me, I'm teaching undergraduates at this university, blah, blah, blah. Um, Typical outputs that you produce. So, syllabi, lesson plans, workshop agendas, student feedback, rubrics. So what are the types of outputs in your teaching role that you are pretty consistently trying to crank out or get help with, right? Again, the more the better at this stage, because the next step is what we're going to do is take all of this information that you give it in these questions, and then we're going to condense that into very concise and compact sort of snippets of statements, right? Personality traits. So, I think this is an important part of who we are, an important part of who we are as teachers, and just sort of how we communicate, right? So that whether that's personality test results, if you do that, or you just want to, excuse me, use a lot of adjectives to kind of describe yourself, or both. Again, the more the merrier. The more information you can give it at this point, the better. What's your writing voice? So what kind of tone do you have? Are you formal or informal? do you use emojis, contractions, blah, blah, blah. Any information you can give it in terms of your writing voice is going to be really useful. Specific to this particular question, um, one thing you can do is you can do something like this, where you give it samples of your writing, right? And so you can give it two, three, four, 8, 10, 12 samples of your writing. So maybe instead of describing how you write, which sometimes can be a little difficult, if you have like really good representative examples of your writing, you can give it that. It could be narrative kind of things. It could be lesson plans, any of those kind of samples you can put in here when you answer this particular question, because it's going to pick out of there and realize, oh, here's the tone, here's the voice, that kind of thing. Same thing for formatting. Um, if you've got little quirks you like to have, me, I like to use bullet lists. I don't like the M dashes now because everybody thinks that's just automatically AI, even though I love doing that for a long time before AI. Um, so similarly, you can describe it or you can give it those writing examples again to say, here's kind of formatting uh, that I like to use. And then we get a little bit more into the teaching part. So that all gives it some sense of who you are and how you like to communicate and your tone and your voice and all that kind of thing. Then we start diving more into the actual teaching part. So it's asking here, think about your best teaching day, what's happening. This is really trying to figure out what is your definition of good teaching. What types of experiences, types of vibe are you trying to recapture when you're teaching? So that if you're asking it to develop lesson plans or activities or anything like that, it's using that as a reference to say, let's try to help Jody recreate these kind of experiences as a part of its thinking process. Um, Asking about current projects and recurring tasks. So kind of the main things you're doing. If you're doing I do a lot of course creation, right? So building courses from scratch, a lot of syllabi sort of reimagination, a lot of updating lesson plans. So just the kind of things that you're working on, sort of recurring tasks that you're working on, because again, it's going to try to layer these things together in the next step. If you've got any kind of big long-term goals or ambitions, either for you, personally as a teacher or in your role, right? So I have some big audacious long-term goals for the program I run here at John Carroll University. And so that's the kind of things that I would put in there. If you're really wanting to, for instance, say, I teach in a more traditional fashion and really long term, I really want to move all of my teaching style more into a project-based learning or something like that, right? Those kind of things where you've always thought, I really would love to do this. That's the kind of thing you put in here because again, it's going to try to steer a little bit of the output it's giving you to line up with where you're trying to go. So it's a little more focused on the future and forward thinking. How do you want your students to change over time, over the length of your course? This kind of again gets at not your long-term goals, but the long-term goals you have for your students. So I personally take a lot more kind of career focus of what I do. I want them prepared for careers and skills and that kind of a thing. Um, but it puts a little bit of perspective on what are your goals for the students in your class. Asked about your teaching philosophy. If you have a teaching philosophy that you feel is relevant and current, this is where you can just copy and paste it in here. If you don't, that's okay. Just think through some kind of principles or how do you approach this job of teaching, right? If you have any kind of preferred pedagogical frameworks that you default to or that you like to use, you can put those in here. You don't have to stick to just one. If there's multiple ones, you kind of play around with the multiple ones. Um, Giving it a sense of a typical class session. So what does it look like start to finish? And how do you keep students engaged? So, if you're asking it to develop lesson plans or activities, and it has a decent sense of how you like to run a class session, structure, timing, format, types of activities, that kind of thing. Is it individuals? It's group? Is it a mix of both? Whatever. Getting them up to boards, being out in the community, whatever it is, right? Whatever you do, throw that in here. it's it's just going to start to call all this information together and create as close as it can a twin of you. Okay. This one is when the student gives you kind of incomplete or incorrect answer, um, how do you respond? So how do you give feedback, right? Because a lot of where I think some of the power of these tools come into play is helping us in developing and delivering some high quality feedback in a timely manner. And so I just added this one. I think it's an important piece because it's going to help it understand how do I engage with the students and how do I provide that feedback for the students. Okay. So those are the 15 questions. Like I said, if they're, you play around with it however you want. If there's other questions you want to add to this that you think are important for your particular context, if there's ones you don't think are important to you, you don't want to, personality traits, you're like, I don't want it to know that, or I don't care about that, or whatever, play around with it. Take ones out, add ones in. It's going to kind of want you to put a little bit of thought and depth into it because as you do this, if you're just giving it short, quick answers of a couple words, it's going to prompt you to say, give me a little bit more, right? So it's going to want some depth to it. Okay. And again, I'll share all this, but here's a conversation like this most recent iteration when I did this, I went through this conversation. And so you can just see it asks you one question, one by one. And, like here's a place where it asked me for typical outputs. And it told me your answer's under 20 words. So what about some other things, right? So it's going to prompt me to give it a lot of depth, which is what I really, or a lot of information, which is what I really want at this point. And so it goes through and it gives me all these 15 questions. I give it all these answers. Here's where I have a teaching philosophy statement that I've developed and I keep updating on a regular basis. And so I just copy and pasted that whole thing in there when it asked me, to summarize my teaching philosophy, right? Something to think about. If you don't have one, that's something I would advise you put some thought into and even engage with, ChatGPT or something for like help me build a teaching philosophy, right? Have it ask you questions to develop one if you don't have one in writing. There are some questions where it kind of knows it's not going to get 20-word answers, excuse me, like in this one. So it won't ask me for that. So again, it's intelligently sort of going through here and figuring this out. So then the next part of this is I want to then say, cool. So you've now got these 15 statements about me, right? Now what I want you to do is look through all of those statements, okay? And I want you to condense those statements into 15 statements that kind of merge it all together and are unique statements, right? So I don't want a lot of overlap, and I want those 15 statements to be sort of a cohesive narrative about me, okay? And so what it does then here, right? I give it this, and it gives me these 15 statements, which you would then go through and you would look through and say, yes, this is accurate. This is accurate. It's missing some of these core details. Didn't quite get this right. You go through and you massage these the way you want. But now what I have is a condensation of all of that information I gave it through those previous Q&A session I did with it. And it's kind of put things together in a way that seems to make a little bit of sense. So it started to condense these things into about 350 characters or so each. And so what I've got are now these 15 statements, right? So then what I go do is one by one, I just type in here, I want you to update your memory with the following statement using only and exactly these words, right? And if I do that, well, let me do it with just something random here. So if I do that, right? Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically tell it, put that exact statement in as a memory that you're going to then use when you're considering my request and giving me some output. Okay. Boop, got it. I'll remember that. And so now I can go in here and I can check and I can see, oh, here it is. It showed up in my memories, right? And so for each of those statements, you just go through and you do that prompt 15 times and you copy and paste each statement in there each time. And then you can come in here for any statement that's in here, you don't like it, you can just get rid of it, right? So now what you would have is something that looks kind of like this, where you've got, and it doesn't matter what order they're in, as far as I've been told, doesn't matter what order they're in, right? But you've got these 15 snippets that tell ChatGPT a lot about who you are as a teacher, how you want to develop materials, how you want to interact with students, how you want to run a class. Everything about kind of your teaching role is in here as a memory, right? And so then what you do is anytime I do this, anytime I'm prompting it, what I will usually do is to say, right? It will automatically consider those memories, but I always give it a little bit of an extra prompt when I'm prompting it to say, "Hey, don't forget, knowing what you know about me from my memories." So I will include that statement in a prompt I give it, just to give it a little extra nudge to say, "I want you to make sure you're really intentionally kind of pulling from that information you have about me." Right? And then what you'll see is if you've done a good job of being transparent and being thorough in creating those statements, I guarantee you, you're going to see much better output in terms of something that seems like a better fit for you. And so the ultimate well, one of the ultimate benefits of this is you spend a lot less time going back and forth, right? If you're trying to develop a lesson plan, going back and forth, tweaking this, no, I want this, no, change this. And the conversation is just a lot shorter because it's taken such a further leap in that first step because you've programmed it to essentially think and act and approach the task like you would, right? Based on the information you've given it. Okay. Um, Okay, so I wanted to stop there. I'm going to show you some other stuff and show you some kind of examples and things. But I wanted to stop there in case, if people have questions or comments, concerns, anything I can address from that section.
Doan,
I
did
got a
you
question.
notice Betsy's question in the chat in the chat? I think it's a great question. And the question is there a way to create multiple personas with that 15 question process?
Yeah, not that I have seen. I think, yeah, not that I've seen. I haven't necessarily tried it. To be honest. But I think if you do that, um, it just ends up confusing itself. And one of the things I've done, just to be very transparent, is I have multiple accounts under multiple emails, right? There's a cost to that, obviously, but like this account is specifically for teaching. I have another one that's specifically for like writing stuff I do. That's the only way I found to really get around it.
Could you not recreate this in different AI platforms like Copilot and do the same thing and just have different personas that way?
Yeah, I have not found that. Um, Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. Yes, you can. I don't know about Copilot exactly specifically, but yeah, I believe Claude offers this. I don't think that Gemini gives you the option of doing this yet. I would imagine this is coming for those who don't already have it, but that's another way to do it.
And do you find that chat is the best AI platform for helping you do this kind of stuff? Are you partial or biased because it's the first one, or is there some reason that makes you think chat is the best and are others equally as good?
Yeah, it's the one I'm most comfortable with, so there's certainly a bias there. I found a little more recently when it comes to some of the writing stuff I do, Claude has seemed to kind of started to be a little bit better, I think. But I also think there's this war, right? This one's a little better now, this one's a little better now, this one's a little better now. So, I don't think there's enough disparity necessarily between them all for me to make a huge jump and shift and switch to another one, right? Um, so I kind of stick to chat. I I get everything I need out of it. It's satisfactory to me. Um, so that's kind of where I stick with it.
I don't want to dominate this, but can I ask you, would you do a favor and just do like a little sample, something that you would do with chat after you fix that, like something you would ask it to do, so we could just see how you would use it in practical?
Yeah, you're a smart guy. That was the next thing I was going to do. So,
Ha, never been called
but
that before, but
yeah,
thanks.
yeah, yeah. I like the planted question. Good stuff. But no, before I got into that, anything else? I was looking through the chat here.
Well, don't couldn't you also, if you, for example, wanted to change your personality, and Betsy, maybe it'd be interesting to know your perspective of why you asked the question that way. But I know if I'm trying to grade something and be a little bit more firm because the class just didn't do something that I had asked them to do, you can do an extended prompt where you say, in these sets of responses, take on this personality, and
Right.
you can sort of enhance it. And then what it'll do is it'll save it as a memory, go back, and you can edit it and calm it down or do something different. But you can actually ask it in a longer prompt to do something like you taught
Yeah.
us to do with interviewing, Doan.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely, in case those are good points, Sam. In a case by case scenario, you can certainly build that into the specific prompt. You can also um, tell it to forget the memories, right? So as a
Oh,
part of a
sure.
prompt, like if you didn't want it to, if you were trying to just start from scratch, for instance, for one thing, you could just tell it like forget all that stuff. I don't know. I'm not 100% confident that it does really forget all that stuff. Um, you can try, right? But no, there's definitely workarounds for all that kind of thing. I haven't found that you could do it all that easily within one
Right.
platform.
Right. Yeah, to give context to it, I do some writing and sort of thought leadership stuff on one hand, and then I do teaching stuff on the other. And so it would be nice to have, a thought partner both ways. Like,
Yep,
own
yep,
both.
yeah, and that's why I have the two, right? That's
Yeah,
the only way I've really found to efficiently go about it.
right.
So
Perfect.
yeah. Uh, okay, let me show you this next part here. Oh, Jody had a question too, or maybe just a statement. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and with pro accounts and she was saying she has a pro account with a friend, shares it, and she can say like this is Jody or this is Bill or whatnot, and then it might pay a little better attention to the preferences of that person. So there's always workarounds if people can be creative, and I think that's part of why I like doing this, and I think more people should do this. Is we learn by sharing, right? And I learn a lot of things from these things, and um, I just think that's kind of the way this all works. So a couple other things I wanted to show you. So there's this temporary chats in ChatGPT. There's this temporary chats button up here at the very top, and so as you can see, what this means is if you use temporary chats, it doesn't keep it in the history. It does not use any information to train the model, and it turns the memory off. So, just in general, if you wanted to have a chat and you don't want it to remember the chat, you don't want it to be possible to be included in the memory, and you don't want ChatGPT to use that information in its model training, this temporary chat button up here is the way to go, right? Now, the downside of this is as soon as you leave this conversation, it's gone. You can't find it again. It doesn't, right? So you gotta know that. But for instance, there's a lot of things where I got, my wife is asking me like, why is this plant brown? And I go, I don't know. I'm gonna take a picture and figure it out, right? Like I don't want that being a part of my teaching chat persona. So I can just use a temporary chat, figure it out, and then it's gone. So it's a way to kind of sidestep some of the cleanup that may have to happen if you keep doing a lot of different stuff within that, right? So it's just another tool to use there. To Bill's question though, so let's do this here. So here's one way, and I just did this real quick, and I wanted to show you a couple different versions and where that you might see some differences here. So in this case, I basically am saying, give me a 45-minute interactive lesson plan for undergraduate freshmen, teach them about the design thinking process. So this is what I did with the account that's trained as me as a teacher, right? So right away, it's starting and kind of taking this approach of a simple, relatable challenge. That's part of how I like to do things a lot of times, is at least kind of open the door and step in with something that's a little simple and something that's a little relatable, right? Gives me some good prep kind of stuff. So I like to know ahead of time again, like what do I need? What am I doing? Is there different ways I need to set the room up? All that kind of stuff. And then it kind of goes through steps here, right? And this is not like any of this. This is not perfect. It's not exhaustive. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to adjust it. But for me to get to this point of what this is giving me, would normally take a lot more back and forth. Whereas now, in one prompt, I'm already multiple steps ahead, right? So it's giving me this idea of kind of awakening their enthusiasm, doing some stuff at with each other, um, doing some empathy interviewing, doing some designing and prototyping. And so it takes it through and it gives me a really decent, I'd say outline for lack of a better word, of what I can be doing, right? And some optional tweaks. Now to contrast that, I also ran the exact same prompt in a version of ChatGPT that is not trained on me as a teacher, right? And so what it gave me is uh, stuff that I don't like to do and I wouldn't necessarily normally do, right? It's kind of giving me do these kind of mini lectures. Um, Students are interviewing each other back and forth, but it's kind of a shallow kind of thing. Again, we're kind of doing stuff on the board. And it's just a much kind of simpler version, I would say, that doesn't have a lot of depth to it, and it doesn't match my pedagogical style at all, right? So if I got this, I would take this and I would say, okay, I don't want to do that. Take that part out, make this more project-based or whatever it might be, right? So I see that there's this difference already between these two things where using the teacher version of me, I can save myself a number of steps to get to this point, right? So now when I'm putting in the work, I'm putting in the work already kind of ahead of the game. Okay. Now the way to even enhance this quite a bit more that I know some of you have seen, but bear with me, is if you use this prompt maker GPT, custom GPT, and so if you go here into this Explore tab under GPTs, and you type prompt maker in and you get this guy, and you start a chat with it, what will happen is it'll come up and you type something such as this, right? So if I were to take the exact same prompt I gave it about creating the lesson plan, I like to always tell it, please optimize this prompt. I don't know if you need to do that. But in that custom GPT, I give it this instruction, and what happens is this one that Ruben built here, this custom GPT, it pulls out and develops a much more robust prompt that is programmed in such a way that ChatGPT really likes to see the structure of a prompt, right? So it's kind of taken my bad prompt or my generic prompt and it's turned it into something much more effective, right? And so if I were to then, in this case, I just copy and pasted that full prompt it gave me, but I would want to go in and adjust it as necessary, right? Again, don't do this, add this part, change that prompt around however you want to. But if I was to go in and run that, now what it's giving me, again, knowing what it knows about me with a much better prompt, it's giving me some assumptions about me in the class. So I can go back and I can fix those if those assumptions are wrong, right? I can tell it, no, 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 you missed this, or change it however I want to change it. It's giving me some learning outcomes, which it didn't really do before. And now it gives me a much more robust kind of minute by minute uh, agenda outline for the lesson, right? Here's the objective of that section. Here are activities and prompts, things that I can be saying and doing as a faculty. Here are the expected student behaviors during that section. Here are materials I need. And here's a quick check for understanding for each section. In this case, 5 minute, 8 minute, 6 minute section, right? So it goes through step by step. Then it says, here's some tips or some suggestions on assessment based on that lesson plan and some adaptations, right? So I could do some formative assessments, I could do some summative stuff, and some adaptations. If students are very quiet or anxious, if they're overactive or unfocused, if I need more rigor, do this, right? So now you can see if I use and start to kind of combine some tools, I built my persona, right, through those memories. And now I use this prompt maker custom GPT to turn generic or not the greatest prompts into much more powerful prompts. And the reason they're more powerful is because they're structured in the way that ChatGPT wants to see them, right? So it would take me a while to write this prompt in that exact structure instead of just using that custom GPT. So now what I get out of this whole process, is I have an understanding of the assumptions it made in developing the work for me. So I can see, if it's gone wrong somewhere, and that can help inform me to change some of my memories if it continuously is making bad assumptions, right? Or making the same bad assumptions. I can go in and I can tweak the memories to say, no, 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 I see where you're getting this from, right? And I get this minute by minute lesson plan, and I can go in here and I can change it. I can update it. I can have it reformat it. I can have it give me more information on like, yeah, tell me more about this assignment, or give me more information if, I know my students tend to be overly quiet or disengaged, right? So give me more information on that. So I'm doing all these things. Ultimately, I've got a much better product when I come out of this with my lesson plan or my rubric or my syllabus or whatever it might be, because it knows a lot more about me and because I'm leveraging the prompt maker GPT, right? So that is the quick and dirty. That is cloning yourself. It's and I would suggest I've done this many times. I keep kind of going back and tweaking and refining it and playing around with it. It takes a while to do it really well, so I would say, give it some time and really spend some time on it because, you know, think of it like you're trying to train a TA to stand into your place, right? You're not just going to do that in a couple minutes. And it's all iterative. Like I said, you can go in and you can review the memories once it's created them. You can delete ones, have it reformat ones, and then you can always update it as you're thinking of things. You go to this conference and you hear some really cool stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I never thought of that. And you want that to now become a part of a pedagogical focus that you have, right? You can add that to the memories anytime by just saying, right, make this a memory, and add that. And I'd say every about 6 months or so, I go in and I will look at my memories and I'll clean them up because it'll start to add some things that I don't understand the lever of how and why and when it decides to add memories or not. But regularly, if you go in and clean it up, then you just keep it from getting real fractured and messy again. So, any other questions or thoughts or things I can share? Yes, Dr. Stamp.
So don't, it's so tempting. You said the magic word TA. In some of my classes, I've got 50 students. And so, for example, like you did that design experiment, and you say, okay, so write a reflection report of the 3 ideas that you got from this exercise and talk to me about what you're going to do to put them in action or something. You give them an assignment, right? Have you used this process because now you've got this clone to create sort of a report generator that provides feedback and say, I'm looking for these three. You give it like a little, like a grading rubric and say, okay, it's 20 points and this is what weak, acceptable and then outstanding. Let it score it and then give constructive feedback in your voice to help you save some time in just typing at the computer. And you can obviously edit them, but do you do that where you use this process to help give feedback to others in your place?
Absolutely. I don't let it grade. I find it's a very nice friend, so it does a horrible job of being a fair, constructive grader. So I don't do the numbers part, the grading part. But yeah, in terms of feedback, absolutely. And part of what you can do is if you have samples of your feedback you've given students. You know what I mean? That's where here was the assignment, here's the feedback I gave. And you have samples of like, here's feedback that I've given on a really good, well done assignment. Here's feedback I've given on like a crap assignment. Here's feedback where I was maybe a little more constructive in my criticism. And you give it all these versions of it. Those are all documents you can then upload when you're asking it to give feedback, right? And if let's say that's something that you want to really use this a lot for, that's where you can have it ask you a lot of questions and you can build a lot more specific memories around the feedback piece particularly,
Yeah.
right? Um, but yeah, and I think it does. I do a lot with my students, and I'm very open about it. One thing I do is at the beginning of the class, I will tell students I want to do this, and if students want to opt out from me using AI to give them feedback, I give them that choice. I just feel like that's my responsibility to have to do that. Um, but then I will always use this as a part of that process. I'll get feedback from it. I will then review it, add my own to it, and then get it to the student. And with this process of kind of creating this version of me, it's really pretty spot on. Sometimes I have to tone it down, which which for those who know me, it's really spot on because I sometimes have to tone it down and be like that's probably not appropriate, that kind of a thing. But no, it works really really well for that. Yeah. Rhonda, is it Rhonda?
Yes,
Rhonda, yes.
yes. My question is like with all the questions that you answered at the beginning, the 15 questions, instead of putting them in the memory, can we just put them in a custom chat GPT, like a custom GPT and as an instructions? And will that be the same or did you ever try that?
Yeah, you can do that. Yep, absolutely. I think, the I haven't tried that, but I think the reason I haven't tried that is because if it's in a custom GPT, then I have
Hmm.
to go to that custom GPT and go through that whole process there. Whereas if I have it just as the memories, it's just
Hmm.
conversation. Any chat works, if that makes sense.
Of course,
So I think
yeah.
it's like an extra step, which isn't a bad thing, but I think it would make an extra
Hmm.
step.
Okay, that will give me will answer the other question. Like if we have more than one persona, maybe we can do a custom GPT for each persona. Like for example.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You could do that. I haven't looked into, I gotta look into this. I haven't looked into if
Mm.
you use a custom GPT, is it then also tapping into the memories, right? But yes, you could create custom GPTs for different personas. You can't
Mhm.
do it on the free plan. You have to have one of the paid plans, I think, to.
Yeah, yeah, I do have the paid plan already. Yeah, I have one. I did one custom GPT like for creating social media posts. Like I gave it all the data and everything I need, like like a sample of my work and everything, so it looks more like me.
Hmm.
I did it for the social media. I didn't do it for the teaching. Like I'm doing the teaching and everything like on a project actually. I have all the files uploaded and inside the project I'm doing like the framework that I work with. So that's why I'm a lot now. This is the first time I hear about the memory. Like I looked at the memory and it was like it has like so many pieces that doesn't make sense anyway. So
Yeah,
I had to take them out. But the thing is, like we have now three different ways we can do it. Like the project, we have the custom GPT, and we have the memory part.
yeah,
Like one of the advantages of custom GPT is you can share it with somebody else if you are interested to share it. Like you
right.
can, yeah. So this is maybe an advantage if I'm working with someone and then I like, especially for social media. use it. I give it to people who like help me out. So they use it for like to get the same like thing that I want.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be an interesting way from a teaching perspective. That could be an interesting way if you're teaching big sections, you got a TA or you're co-teaching
Mhm.
with somebody else or something like that. That could be an interesting way to be able to share, kind of
Yeah.
share your own persona.
Yeah, my own clone, my own persona. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Don, that's the way I do for all of my grading of my large assignments is I make a custom GPT and I've put the frameworks in there and to your point, Jody, I use the custom GPT to do it, but I'm trying to think if I can figure out using this approach that Don does with these 15 questions, if I can give it better voice, because after you do 20 or 30 students, you get to 30 or 40 students, it starts to drift a little bit and it starts to just get really nice for no reason, right? It'll say, "Hey, this is wrong," but wow, nice effort. Well, that's not what I would say. I would say we need to get it right
Yeah.
as opposed to the effort, right? So it's interesting to see how it changes over time, and I'm wondering if there's a way with those memories to give it better structure and discipline to not drift just because it's trying to find new ways to make predictions around the same thing instead of saying the same thing over and over again. I think it just tries to be very predictive of maybe the next thing you'd say after you were said the same thing 15 times over and over.
Yeah. I mean, I personally haven't run into too much of that drift since I started doing this. There's some, it's what's going to happen because of the predictive nature of it. But I found it to be much better with that, with this kind of a building this kind of a structure into it. Deanna had a good question. This be considered an interdisciplinary TA as long as your framework remains the same. In other words, if you have an intro class in business and then a senior industry related class, or just tweak it for the situation. So I would say, again, part of this conversation of custom GPTs and memories, part of it is if you're needing various contexts, um, whether it's using different accounts or using some version of custom GPTs or something like that. But like for me, I teach a bunch of different classes. I never know what I'm teaching exactly semester by semester. And so these memories and this thing I've built, it's more um, sort of higher level, right? It doesn't go into, discipline specific or anything like that. So this is just more really about the pedagogical approach, the tone and voice, the way of giving feedback, the way I run a classroom, just that sort of higher level stuff. And then within the prompts I give it or the custom GPTs I build, that's where I can be specific. Yes. Anything else while I'm here with y'all? Thank you, Bill. Yeah, so I'm happy to hang out, if people have questions or want to chat about whatever, but like I said, I'm gonna email you a bunch of stuff afterwards here, and you have my email to get in touch with me if you're struggling with things or you hit a road bump as you're doing some of this stuff or playing around with it, or if you come up with amazing insights and you stumble onto some unbelievable discovery while you're doing this. I'd love to hear about it. It's the best way I learn about this stuff is learning from others. Um, and then, I like to do these every so often just with kind of interesting things I find that I've found to be really helpful to me in my teaching role. And so, I'll be doing more stuff and just kind of throwing more stuff out there. Um, and LinkedIn too, if you're on LinkedIn, I spend too much time on there probably sharing stuff and having fun over there. So that's another place you can find me. But
No, no,
um,
no, no. Please don't say that. We need more of that.
I'm saying maybe there's other people in my life like my wife
Right.
who thinks I might spend too much time on there. Um, but no, I'm happy to stick around. I'll be here. But yeah, that's all I had for you. I wanted to just walk you through and show you that. I'll send it all to you so you got really, really tight step-by-step instructions for everything. And then, like I said, use and abuse me as a resource for whatever I can do to be of assistance to you.
I have a question, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Where do you think we're going to go from here? I mean, what does this look like in a year
Mhm.
from now, in your opinion? Do you see some sort of a trend, or some sort of a direction that we're going, just generally speaking? In 5 years, are we all going to be using, AI chatbots to help teach class? I mean, what is this? Or maybe I should say, what do you hope it looks like?
Yeah, I try not to think of that. I used to, and then I realized I have absolutely no idea. It's going so fast and it just changes so quickly. Um, so I have no clue is my stock answer to that type of a question. I would love to see, and what I've been spending a lot of time on more recently is there a way to leverage these kind of platforms and these kind of things to create more personalized learning experiences for students without, with still maintaining the rigor, et cetera, but you know, Stamp and Betsy and Jason and Deanna are different people. And could we provide the same outcomes, objectives, rigor, et cetera, to all of them, but personalized to them individually?
Well, you built that chatbot for the dream job, remember?
Hmm.
And or someone did, and I used that in class, and I used it again this semester, and it occurred to me that that achieves what you just said. And I think, and I wonder, couldn't the class be just a series of these chatbots that are either scenarios, case studies, questions, or whatever, and then they could be led by the chatbot itself, given the inputs that the students have, which are going to be individualized by a natural course of, there being different people. Does that seem like a reasonable expectation? Because I've thought that that might be a good thing to do, is create a series of these chatbots that go over the various topics so that the output the students provide could be assessed as individual means.
Uh, yeah, I think yeah, I don't know. There's a fine line of how much.
Yeah, I don't mean
To
the
some
entire
extent.
class, but I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like, that, like, I have participation is 25% of my classes, and I'm thinking, well, that definitely could could definitely supplant that portion.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I teach a lot of hybrid classes that are, half face to face, half online. And there's always a online discussion component that students hate. And I think I would just writing in my own notes. I was like, oh, a chatbot could really be a replacement for that. And then we use a app at our school called Boodlebox, which actually lets me build assignments that that's it's FERPA compliant. And so I can build an assignment and put my students in it, and I can see the full um like I don't have to rely on them to give me the discussion or edit it before I just get to see their interaction with the bot, which is pretty cool. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think similar. Like I'm thinking about where do all the pieces happen? I think as educators, our job is going to be to really focus on curiosity and creativity and deep learning in a way that is different than we've ever had to think about before.
Yeah, I think so. I think it just helps us rethink or think for the first time why we're doing what we're doing and how we're, what goals do we have and how we're achieving them. And, it's that instructional design piece, really, I think when we boil it down, which for me, number one, I was never trained in at all. I had no clue how to do that for many, many years. I didn't even know what it was for many years, right? And so I think all of those kind of things are, wherever this AI stuff layers in there, I think it's forcing a lot of us to think along those lines, which is a good thing.
It seems that the word critical thinking gets overused, but you know, as a former employer, if I had somebody that came to work for me that, even though they might not have the right answer, but they're trying really hard and understand how to critically think, then I want that person on my team, because I know that the company and organization is going to be stronger. And
Right.
so I do things like ask how many pounds of trash the town we live in generates a day, and ask them to do that in an analog way via, think, pair, share kind of stuff. And to me, that getting to think in those terms is a huge part of what I hope to teach.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the potential's there, right? And I think that part of why I share so much or try to share so much is because I think that's how we get there is just by sharing with each other and this worked and this didn't and have you thought of this and it's how we learn, right? So I just always encourage people to like whatever platforms or forums you're a part of or whatever, like just share what you're up to, and I think we all get better that way.
Well, I think we all know that you probably have sparked a whole lot of interest and certainly created as something of a your portion of the revolution of this. So thanks for that, by the way, because it has
Sure.
been a tremendous help to me. Because otherwise, I would be just freaking lost without it. Because there's no playbook and there's no owner's manual to this, and the old school way of just getting the syllabus and changing the dates is not going to work anymore.
Yeah,
So
that's correct. Happy to be a part of it.
it's
Yeah,
been a huge help to me. I know that.
good, good, good. All right. I think we are all good. So you're gonna get an email from me with the recording and some other resources and stuff. Like I said, I'm here as a resource, and whatever I can do to help you along your journey, happy to at least chat about it. Right. So thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time. Hopefully it's helpful. You'll see an email, and please do stay in touch. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Doan.
You betcha. Bye, everybody.